After a mid-summer break, drivers and teams in Fanatec GT World Challenge America are back in action this weekend for rounds 7 and 8 in the championship. The season began in April on the West Coast in Sonoma before making stops in Sebring, Austin, and now Alton, Virginia. Rekindling championship battles and the potential for precipitation are top of mind at Virginia International Raceway, a fast, old-school circuit that truly is a driver's track. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Virginia. I'm Kyle Heyer, joined by Calvin Fish. Amanda Busick is in the pit lane. And Calvin, this racetrack is a fast place. It's an old-school circuit, and it's a bit of a return to school for everybody after a bit of a break since Coda a couple months ago.
Yeah, a couple of month breaks, so everyone trying to get into a routine here as we see everyone getting limbered up and ready to go. And racetrack has had a lot of rain overnight, so it'll be a little bit green, as we call it, a lot of rubber down. So that'll be a challenge for these drivers. And 2 segments here. So the key for these drivers right now is to not make that critical error, because even though the racetrack line is pretty dry right now, it's going to be slippy on those curbs, easy to make a mistake.
And the track has been challenging here this morning. And down on pit lane, talking to the teams before they head out on the racetrack, is Amanda Busick. Amanda, how are things down there?
Hey, Kyle. Good morning, gentlemen. And yeah, conditions are what's going to be talked about all day today. I don't like to play meteorologist, but take whatever radar and forecasts you like, and let's bring a little optimism to the day. But talking to the teams, they'll be ready for what might be ahead. We did have some rain overnight here in Virginia, some wet track conditions this morning. We did have GT America and TC America on track prior to this session, so some of that standing water that was here at VIR now seems to be dissipating around track. I do imagine teams are going to go with the slick tires to start here, but I did confirm with race control, if tires are changed during this qualifying session, shall precipitation add itself into the conditions here this morning, drivers can change tires at will with no loss of lap times to their qualifying sessions. But when you talk about what's happening in the paddock, you look at that pro category, you can see Bill Oberlin about to get ready to go out on track behind me. But I was talking to his teammate Vroon Chokski yesterday about the potential rain conditions that we're going to face today, and he said, Amanda, my name in Sanskrit means God of Rain. You guys, Bill Oberlin is racing alongside the God of Rain this weekend.
Oh man, that's probably good for them. But again, the rain overnight is a big challenge, I think, because the track is mostly dry. We saw earlier in those earlier qualifying sessions that the times were within about a second, but offline on the curbs and especially in the grass, Calvin, it's still going to be pretty treacherous.
Yeah, and with this double qualifying session here, a little error by the driver number 1 in this session we're just going to get into can certainly hamper things moving forward to the weekend. And you're very much on the back foot if you have bad track position here. Great racetrack to race. A little bit tricky to pass on, so you want to be at the sharp end of the grid here today, so this qualifying session is super important. The balance of the car will be a little bit different, cooler conditions than what you're experienced here over the last couple of days with testing and practice yesterday, so it'll be a challenge for these drivers to make all of the correct decisions here. As you said, Kyle, offline, on those painted curbs, you could go for a ride, and there are some big consequences here.
Well, 2 driver lineups here in Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS, and the first driver in those driver lineups will take to the racetrack. There'll be a short break, and then the second driver will climb in and go again. And the conditions even between those 2 sessions might be different enough that you're gaining some time, especially in the Pro-Am lineups where the pro is in the car second. So lots to learn here in the next few minutes.
Yeah, having said that, I thought I just saw Bill Oberlin suited and booted, ready to go. So I'm not sure if there's a bit of a strategy play. We saw Regulator Racing do that with Jeff Burton and Philip Ellis many times this year. So maybe some of the other teams are thinking that may be the way to best go about attacking this race weekend.
Yeah, certainly. That strategy was interesting to follow, and the idea behind that was that when you put the pro in the car, when the rest of the field has their AMs in that category, they're going to have a massive pace advantage. But, you know, that advantage goes away when other drivers start to do that, and I think probably less so of a difference in the pro as well when both drivers have similar ratings. But in conditions like this, I think it really comes down to the driver to find where that pace is going to be around this 3.2-mile, 17-turn track.
The tires go on the last possible moment. They're out of the ovens and out of the blankets, and a little bit of tire temperature will be critical here on these opening laps.
And it sounds like Bill Oberlin is the driver behind the wheel of that car, so interesting strategy play here, Calvin. We'll see how it pays off for them in 15 minutes around here at Virginia International Raceway. And, you know, we talked about how this is an old school circuit. I think the thing that, to me, that really makes it such is that there's no pavement runoff anywhere. It's all grass. You get a little bit of curbing in some places, and I guess there's maybe a verge that you can use in some places, but there's paint on those. Those are very slippery. And in places like Snake right here, the track is very narrow. There's only effectively one line through it. So if there's some damp areas or some puddling, you just see some water spray up there from behind the diffuser, it can be tricky to get through.
It really can. It's a super challenging racetrack, particularly up here through the climbing S's. The speeds are insane in perfectly dry conditions. It's flat out all the way to turn 10, then down a gear and then hustle through there. And then you have to get things slow down and be very patient here through Oak Tree to get that launch down Madison Avenue.
The lead car in that group is the 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche. Adam Adelson and Elliott Skier, who are currently your Pro Class points leaders. And then the car in trail is RS1. They're back to their Pro lineup here this weekend with Spencer Pompelli and Trent Hinman. So looking forward to see what they can do behind that 120.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of teams this year sweep the weekends of the collectively 6 weekends, if you count Pro-Am and Pro. We've seen 5 sweeps, so it seems when a team is dialed in and they have the magic sauce for a particular racetrack, they're really able to carry that through the whole weekend. We'll see what happens here, but just love this rhythm through this section. As you said, old school racetrack, so much fun, but if you make that little mistake, you're off for a big one.
Yeah, this track has changed very little since its construction in 1957. It was just effectively paved with a bulldozer. They just drew out the track that they wanted, and it has changed very little. I think really the biggest thing that's changed is the loss of the oak tree a couple of years ago down that marked turn 12, but the corner hasn't lost any of its character besides that. So a fascinating racetrack as the 120 Wright Motorsports car heads into NASCAR Bend here, turn 3, and then into left hook, this challenging corner here.
Big puddle there as you come through NASCAR corner there and exit the corner. A little slide there, so those tires are kind of wet as you get to that next corner, which is left hook. Then through the Snake. But we talk about this racetrack being unforgiving. However, the circuit have done a tremendous job of updating all of the safety features with catch fencing. There's an extra layer of Armco, as you can see from the early days here at VIR. So it's a very safe racetrack, even though it is pretty high commitment.
Yeah, there's a lot of big commitment areas here at VIR, especially here at South Bend as well. But let's have another look at that moment over there at left hook as we take a look here into NASCAR Bend and then tracking out. This is that bit of runoff I talked about, but in the curbs, that's where all that water is going to stay and just splash through it, and that can upset those Pirelli P0s.
It can. You can see him there, and Adam tried to get up on that curbing there through left hook and just lost the rear of the car because tire temperatures are going to be cooled down when you're running through a big puddle there, and then you're asking for grip in the very next corner.
Does tire temperature, as the tire heats up and gets to its optimal temperature for the dry, does that help the wet grip at all in those damp areas?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, tire temperature is so critical. You'll sometimes see in a wet race where someone will just take off. And what they've done, they've actually generated more tire temperature, and you get that by loading the car. But if you don't have the tire temperature, it's like a chicken and egg situation, which one comes first? So sometimes you can see a driver just looks like they're in a league of their own by getting that wet tire into that performance window.
Times across the board here for the 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche. And it's a 1:52.035 for Adam Adelson, which gives us a benchmark. That's about 6-7 seconds off of the fastest times from practice yesterday. So a bigger difference than we saw in the qualifyings earlier this morning, but give them a few minutes, Cal, to work up to pace.
Yeah, and there we see immediately Philip Ellis knocks 5 seconds off of that. So I think these times are going to tumble and get very close to what we saw here yesterday. I think we've seen lap times in the 1:43 range here in years past, but the racetrack this weekend didn't seem to be sharing the same amount of grip as we've seen in previous years here, so we'll wait and see in these cooler conditions how these drivers can hustle through. So Philip Ellis again, Regulator Racing, electing to put their pro in for this first session and do that reverse strategy. Bill Oberlin and ST Racing following suit.
And Alec Udell in the pro category, the DXTT Racing 63, that new Corvette Z06 GT3R. They shot out of a cannon in their debut race at Circuit of the Americas and had a fantastic weekend there. I think everyone's looking at that as potentially the new rabbit to chase if they can repeat that performance here this weekend. And I think maybe the wet racing, if we get that later today, is a bit of a question mark for them. But the data sharing between the other series that car runs in where they've had some wet races, that's been very helpful to DXTT Racing.
Yeah, I think on the global stage, certainly over in WEC, the World Endurance Championship, Corvette Racing have some information with the wet running from there, so that will be certainly an advantage they may have should we see any conditions that are rain here. I think today looks more prominent in terms of actually having a wet race. It looks like it's going to clean up nicely and have a nice bright day tomorrow, but certainly there's a bit of consideration of precipitation later this afternoon.
Alec Udell up 2/10 in that first sector, best of everybody, as Bill Auberlin's gone to the top of the board at a 47.075, so looking pretty solid for the 28 ST Racing BMW.
I think Auberlin immediately got traffic to start his next flyer, so I'm not sure what he's going to be able to produce on this one. Let's not forget, with these conditions, you can't bank on getting that full 15 minutes, so you might think, oh, I'm just going to ease into it, feel out the track conditions. Well, if suddenly someone goes for a ride and we get a red flag, this session could get curtailed a little bit early. So all of those things have to be factored into your thinking here in this 15-minute session.
And this run down from Roller Coaster to South Bend, there's a big compression right there as you head through turn 17, and that can be especially treacherous when it gets wet, so that'll be a trouble spot potentially later today. But half a second up in sector 2 for Udell, and this is probably going to put him towards the top of the board this time through. And yes, it does. A 146.421, and the 63 goes to the top.
Yeah, we saw lap times in the low 45s here yesterday, and I wouldn't be surprised to see us get down there if this session stays green for the full 15.
There's the Acura NSX GT3 Evo, the Racer's Edge Motorsports car with Luca Mars behind the wheel at the moment. It's been a bit of a challenge this year to get up to speed and just kind of work out the new driver lineup and the communication between the drivers. But after a long break and heading back into it, P3 on the board right now.
Yeah, and they looked good here yesterday. Zach Veach said the car felt really good, and the team had good comments after the practice. So they came into this qualifying day with a lot of momentum and positivity, and that's a team that the whole program got started very late. They went to Sonoma. That was almost like a test session on that first race weekend. So they're playing catch up a little bit, but certainly a great team. Had so much success here in this championship over the last handful of years, and a really solid driver pairing as well with Veach and Luca.
If I recall, last year Racers Edge Motorsports, it was a different driver lineup at the time, but they were running very, very well. Had a puncture throughout the race at some point and really ended a weekend for them in a poor way. And it was frustrating because they had the pace to win that event, I feel. So see if they can repeat that performance here. Spencer Pompelli behind the wheel of the 85 RS1 Porsche, up to second, a 146.748.
Yes, it's one of his local tracks. He knows it very well. His father, Tom, I actually raced for Tom's team way back, one of the last races I actually competed in at the 24 Hours of Daytona. He's here on site camping, watching his son compete here this weekend.
And Philip Ellis in that number 91 Regulator Racing Mercedes-AMG GT3 in the green, sectors 1 and sector 2. And we'll see how sector 3 fares for Ellis, and it's purple, and he goes right back to the top at a 46.2. And here's Alec Udell, and he goes to the top, so a bit of a revolving door there at the top of the moment.
Yeah, really nice lap there by Alec, and he's really grabbed this opportunity with both hands. He's such a fast, young, impressive young driver, and getting this opportunity with a big team, with a big brand like Corvette Racing, just really stood up to that challenge. And as he said, I'm now in the history books, getting that first global victory for this new Corvette Racing platform.
Yeah, DXDT Racing working very closely with Chevrolet and Corvette, and I think that's a great opportunity for any young drivers. Bill Auberlin goes third quickest, so 146.293. His best lap was the most recent one in that ST Racing BMW.
Yeah, so he and Ellis just separated by a few hundredths of a second, but right now Alec Udell has about half second clear on this field. He's kind of hasn't improved anything on this first sector on this next lap, so we'll see if he's having a little bit of a cool down and then a reset and go again.
Yeah, in conditions like this, would you expect that they would run a quick enough lap and say, all right, we're done and we're happy with that? Or because the track continues to dry out, you should keep pushing until the end of the session?
Well, you got to feel this track is going to ramp up, so maybe you just don't take too much out of the tires, get a banker in, because as we said, the racetrack could go red if someone makes a mistake and gets off in the grass and can't get out of there. But yeah, this track should ramp up and get more and more grip and get a drier line as we get through this session. But
oof, big jump over the curb there for Philip Ellis, and throwing some sparks out from the underneath of the rub blocks there on the front, so he's getting aggressive now. And
personal best sector 1, not a great middle sector, so I'm not sure this is going to threaten Alec Udell's pole time at the moment. It does go a little bit quicker, but still 4/10 off.
Alec Udell was quicker in sector 2 and sector 3 and improves on his own best lap, a 145.660 that time through. But still 4/10 clear of the 91 Regulator Racing cars. This Corvette's looking very solid here in this first qualifying session, and if they can back it up in the second qualifying, they would potentially be sitting on pole for both races. And it's a 90-minute race. You've got time to make passes, Cal, but you'd certainly like to start up front and not have to do any of that.
Yeah, and I see Auberlin here. He's not had a great run in traffic. We saw him start his second flyer stuck in traffic through the first sector, and there on that lap, he's about, 1.2 seconds off his personal best, and I'm not sure if he really started this lap perfectly in terms of getting a clean run through Hogpen to start the flyer and get down that straightaway. So you're immediately on the back foot, and they'll have a predictive lap time on their dash to know what he's up to. So he may have to reset. So yeah, we've got 4 minutes to go, so he could, you know, kind of ease off on this lap and reset.
Luca Mars working his way up through Snake at the moment, and again, that driver pairing with Zach Veach, who has a lot of experience in open wheel racing, but the GT cars were relatively new to Zach, so still working kinks out, as we mentioned. But Luca Mars, P4 overall at the moment, and third in the pro category, and nice steady hands over South Bend. That's a high commitment corner that drops off at corner exit. There's a pretty gnarly curb out there. If you get it too far off and drop a tire, it can make a bad day real fast.
Yeah, the real key is on the approach there to go all the way over to the right, so it just widens the radius as much as possible so you can survive on the outside there, but you're going to be pushing, and then you got to whoa everything down for turn 11. That's a corner, particularly in race conditions. You get a lot of marbles out there. Now we see Ellis respond to Udell. He goes 2/10 faster and goes to the top of the tree.
And Udell improved again as well, but still behind by about 0.117, so it's very tight between these two at the top. I imagine in the next 3 minutes we'll see them continue that fight.
Yeah, and everyone's going to dig a little bit deeper now, knowing that you've got a real threat for that pole position. So Alec Udell just ran 3 laps there within 1/10 of a second of each other, but now he knows that Philip Ellis has raised the bar a little bit.
Yeah, Ellis was quickest in sector 1 and 3, Alec Udell in sector 2. And sector 1 here is, you know, the handling section is a little slower, and big push for Luca Mars into the horseshoe at turn 1.
I'm not sure if you got in the ABS there and lost the front end a little bit. If you do get into the ABS, it kind of numbs the braking ability, and you just go forward a little bit. Tries not to lock the car. You can see the commitment through there. Unfortunately, most of the load is out of the car by the time they're getting to that paddle. If it's a bit earlier in the corner, it would be more drama.
And through Snake, you're going to use all the curbs here, especially in the dry, just to straighten that out as much as possible. If you have to follow the real way the road goes, it's a little slower through there, so straighten it out the best you can. And then the climbing S's is the same. It's all flat here in a GT3 car, but is there a lift? Not at all. You use the downforce there into South Bend, then on the brakes, tip it in, use a little curb there on the apex and down towards Oak Tree. But that was a better sector after that mistake in turn 1.
Adelson there. P6 overall, P5 in the pro class, so it's Philip Ellis aboard a Pro-Am entry that has the overall fastest time. Then Alec Udell has the pro pole by about 7/10 over Bill Oberlin. Let's see if Bill can respond on this lap. He's gone personal best in sector 1, so he's started the lap in the right way. As I said, hit a lot of traffic on this short session.
Number 32, Kyle Washington, paired up with Tom Sargent in the GMG Racing Porsche. New livery on this car here this weekend, and quite striking if I do say so myself. Got all sorts of colors on this car and looking solid so far.
Yeah, and that's a brand new race car. The car that he's previously campaigned in Fanatec GT will move over to his GT America entry here this weekend.
They haven't really gotten a representative lap here yet in this session. Best lap was a 57.1, but I don't see it having actually counted towards his best, so needs to get up on the board here in the next 57 seconds or so. He can start this next lap, but as soon as that checkered falls, it's only completing laps that you're allowed to do. And Kyle right out to the edge of the road here and down into Hogpen. So potentially Alec Udell looks like he's backed it down at least, and there's that 63 car sitting in the pit lane, and with only 35 seconds to go, that will likely be the end of their qualifying.
Yeah, and I think they may have looked for that pole position, who may give them the hardest time. Bill Oberlin did improve on his previous best, but he's still about 6/10 off Alec's time, so they probably feel they're pretty safe there. Save those tires that they'll utilize in the race here today, should it be dry.
And Philip Ellis, no improvement in sector 1. Heading up Madison Avenue. This is a long straightaway, but it's mostly uphill, and then there's a bit of a blind crest, and you go down again and then back up towards Roller Coaster, and it's one of those corners that bears a name that really fits. It's a big drop off a cliff.
It's a really tricky brake zone, particularly if you're in close competition in the races in terms of how to position your car, because you're going to want to come in from the right-hand side a little bit, get over to the left, and someone can slide it down to the inside if they want to be super brave. But it's all about coexisting there if you're going to dice it out through that sector of the racetrack.
And looks like the 91 will stay on track and take the checkered on the racetrack here. But Philip Ellis, quickest so far in qualifying 1 for Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. And that was about a half second off his best. But that is still going to be pole position in race number 1, unless anybody can go quicker, but it doesn't appear at the moment, Cal, that anyone's in position to do that. Luca Mars comes across, finishes 4th overall and 3rd in that pro category.
Yeah, it seemed like no one was really able to get, Orbel in there. Yes, he does improve. He gets down in the 45, so he found a couple of tenths there. So he may be ruined the fact that maybe when the tires are at their best, he did encounter traffic, so there may be more potential in that 28 car.
Elias Sabo improves to 12th in the Flying Lizard Motorsports number 8, a 149.823. This, I believe, is also, well, he's got a new car here this weekend, but I believe that's on the GT America side. And here is the 120 of Adam Adelson up in the green, actually. So this was one that kind of snuck by us here. So let's see if he's got anything in this final sector.
He's digging deep, leading this championship, swept the weekend at Sonoma, 4 runner-up finishes. On top of that, brilliant season this dynamic young driver combination of putting together.
Still a little bit of water on the right-hand side there by the pit entry, but there you're full throttle and no big challenge there. An improvement, but not a large one, a 146.876 that's 6th overall.
Yeah, so he and Spencer Pumpelly only separated by a 10th, so it looks like the Porsches may not be in the sweet spot in terms of the balance of performance here this weekend, or a racetrack that suits them, but we'll have to wait and see. One factor during the heat of this weekend that we've seen so far is tire degradation has been a huge factor in terms of a little bit of a drop-off and managing those tires, particularly very late in the stint. Cars are getting very loose, sliding around, so you never know with that Porsche, getting that weight over the rear of the car, maybe that'll help them a little bit.
There are 5 different manufacturers in the top 5 at the moment. Mercedes-AMG with pole, with Regulator Racing. Of course, we had Mercedes-AMG there, Corvette representation, BMW, Porsche, and Acura in the top 5 overall. It's 29 and Justin Rothberg, who was in that car there for the first of the 2 qualifying sessions, and I believe this is his first time here this weekend, and made a comment the other day that the bugs are real big here too, need air traffic control clearance, some of them do, but he's been having a fun time kind of learning the racetrack and also still getting used to this car, but he's been very, very impressive in both GT America and in Fanatec GT World Challenge. So what are these drivers talking about, Cal, after qualifying 1?
Well, I think for Philip Ellis, he's probably talking about where you need to be careful, sort of detailing how you kind of arc into one of the corners and where you can't afford to drop a wheel off. Maybe talking about the car's balance a little bit. Great chemistry between these two. I had a little chat with him yesterday afternoon. Philip Ellis likes his ice cream. He said it was his favorite ice cream of the day. I don't know how he says.
It's been real hot, though. Yeah. So I get it. I mean, it's been up in the high 80s, low 90s. It's been a really, really warm week, so I think everyone was looking forward to some ice cream here. But let's have a look at the results here from qualifying 1. And at the top of the board, it's Philip Ellis and Jeff Burton in that Regulator Racing Mercedes-AMG. It's Corvette and DXDT Racing in 2nd and leading that pro category. Then the ST Racing crew, Bill Auberlin, puts it 3rd quick. Luca Mars for Racers Edge Motorsports, Cal, and Spencer Pumpelly in P5 for RS1.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, as we say, more teams adopting that reverse strategy, starting there, more experienced, faster driver potentially for race 1, and then flipping the order for Sunday's event, of course.
Yeah, so certainly, yeah. So the pro category leaders there, of course, DXTT Racing and SSC Racing leading in pro, and then the Pro-Am Regulator Racing and Turner Motorsports. Justin Rothberg, 7th overall, but P2 in that Pro-Am class. And when it comes to the race, yeah, everyone's on the racetrack together, Cal, but 2 completely separate races, but you often end up having those intra-class battles, which makes things pretty thrilling. Yeah,
and again, 10-minute winner essentially in the middle of this race. It's a little bit bigger than that. We'll get into the details of how that strategizes for this season versus last, but yeah, and I think hanging on to that tire is going to be the key. I think that overcut, undercut could be more of a factor here this weekend.
So after qualifying 1, let's head down to Philip Ellis and Amanda Busick in the pit lane.
And that Rover Pole Position Award for today will go to Regulator Racing, Philip Ellis behind the wheel of that here in qualifying 1. And we saw that little conversation between you and Jeff before Jeff got in the car. What can you tell us about the track today, Philip?
Honestly, only that it's a lot drier than we expected. I think we made some adaptations before qualifying, which were a little bit too much. Thankfully, it worked out. I'm just trying to give Jeff as much advice as I can before he gets in.
So Calvin did rat on you a little bit. Is there a flavor of ice cream today that you're after?
No, but I think he has one. I think you might have to ask him again what he stole from our fridge.
Thanks.
What'd you steal from his fridge?
I went on the healthy side.
Okay.
It was like a fruity type bar. It's tasty. There was some, I think there was a high calorie side and a low calorie side, and I definitely stuck to the left, which I need to do.
There you go. So he was mentioning that they made some adjustments. Was that is that a driver adjustment as far as where they're placing the car on the racetrack, or is that a mechanical adjustment, a technical adjustment? That
I would suggest it's a mechanical adjustment where they maybe soften the car off, thinking they were going to need a bit more mechanical bite with the conditions not being perfect. So again, we kind of were alerted to the fact the racetrack was going to be pretty good based on the TC times, but maybe they were just more doing on observation of the racetrack, seeing it was very wet offline and didn't think they would have perfect grip. So, but he did it well. He did enough, grabbed the pole, and they'll probably reverse that setup a little bit for the race here this afternoon.
Andy Lee climbing behind the wheel, the number 8 Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3 for Flying Lizard Motorsports, and great looking livery on this, 511 on the side. And of course they had a big weekend out at GT America at Long Beach, kind of a home event for 511, but working up to pace. And yeah, the Aston Martin team had a pretty good weekend at Spa a few weeks ago as well, but as they head up Madison Avenue down the back straightaway, getting some temperature in those Pirelli P0s, just a bit of weaving back and forth, get some heat in the tires and the brakes. And Calvin, as far as the different kinds of adjustments, you mentioned softening the car up. Is there anything else that you'll do from an electronic standpoint, traction control, ABS, playing with those settings for what I would consider kind of the tail end of a mixed session here?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if it was like half an hour earlier, they would have definitely been dialing those in a little bit, having a little bit more interrupt on the TC, the traction control and stuff like that to try and keep the car on the racetrack. But as Philip said, it was pretty close to being dry. You had to be careful if you stepped outside the racing line a little bit. So I don't think they'd be working those tools too much during that session so far.
Working through Horseshoe and then into NASCAR Bend. This is another challenging braking zone because the track continues to curve around. So you're kind of braking in a straight line across the track to tip that in, or are you going to try to ride the edge there and kind of keep a bit of cornering force?
Well, I think you want to keep it in the straight. You're coming from about 155, 160 miles an hour into that brake zone, so much straight line braking, but you're then going to be trail braking. Then as you're coming off, I think your line, ideally, we went for a ride with Neil Verhagen yesterday in his M8 personal car, and he said you want to try and keep it in the middle of the road, but I think as the tire deck kicks in a little bit, you're going to start washing out a little bit wider and more of a radius coming off just to try and keep the power down.
So this is qualifying 2, so the second driver in the 2-driver lineup is behind the wheel now, so the 93 will be turned over to Zach Veach and Racers Edge Motorsports crew. Big braking zone down here into turn 1 that you mentioned, and this is a tricky corner as well. It's one of the slowest corners on the racetrack, and then accelerating out. This is that NASCAR bend I was just talking about, where there's this left bend and then you're braking kind of straight across the road and then tipping in. And in the dry, you'll probably use some curb there on the apex, but certainly that exit you'd like to use to widen the track out.
Yeah, you really use a lot of that curb on the exit. You got that big puddle there to deal with this morning, so that's a factor. But yeah, don't want to be up too much on the left-hand entry. The teeth, as I call them, of the curb get a little bit deeper and like into the molars if you get too much up on those, and that can really unsettle the car. Then you're catching the car versus just focusing forward.
Elliott Skier puts one of the first times on the board down here, a 146.111. That goes right to the top of the board. Robbie Foley for Turner Motorsport goes second quick in the number 29, a 146.296. So already some quicker times than we've seen.
Yeah, I think Foley could be a factor here. He sat on the pole. He and Vin Barletta did a one-off here last year, if you recall, and Foley actually sat on the pole for his session, and I think the BMW is quick. We talked about Justin, his teammate, not knowing this circuit. They did do a test here, but again, that was several weeks ago, so I think a lot of the AM drivers really will struggle more in terms of this 2-month break and really getting back into kind of the performance factor that they had maybe at Coda. So I expect the AMs to get stronger and stronger as the week progresses. That's a little twitch there as he comes down through the roller coaster.
Yeah, this car's looked a little nervous at times, and that's a challenging section as well. There's really nowhere to go if you make a mistake. And Zach Veach gathers it up, and he's still in the green sectors 1, sector 2. So see what the 93 Racers Edge Motorsports Acura can do, and to the top of the board, a 145.747. So that's not a bad first go at it, I'd say.
That's really impressive. So what did we see, a 45.4 was it for Ellis? So about 0.3 off for the fastest time in that first qualifying session.
Elliott Skier on the braking zone here into roller coaster.
He's got a good lap going here. Purple sector 1, personal best sector 2, so this could threaten Veach's time at the top.
And they were some big commitment drivers down there through Hog Pen earlier in the first session. And that's one of those areas where I think as a driver you feel like you can gain a bunch of time by getting more aggressive over those curbs, and it gets pretty wild, especially later in the race. But I think that was the cause of a couple issues last year, is drivers being very aggressive over those curbs without having the tires up to pressure just yet.
Boom, to the top. Fastest time of the day, 1:45.256 for Elliott Skier. So yeah, you can be more aggressive, Kyle, when you got the tire grip to work with. If you start to do that when you get a little bit deeper into the run here in race conditions, you're just going to start to slide and overheat those tires even more. But I think while the grip is there, this is when you're going to really be pulling out all the stops.
So Elliott Skier to the top, as you mentioned. Neil Verhagen for ST Racing's number 38 BMW, second on the board. Pushes Zach Veach to third. Little wiggle there leaving NASCAR Bend on that slippery runoff area that we've been talking about. And then into Snake. And back on power again. And the 08 car, by the way, has served a drive-through penalty for pit lane speeding violation. You'd much rather do that now than in the race later today. So if something is in need of calibration, or like to get that sorted out before the points start paying out later.
It kind of throws you a little bit. You're really stoked and ready to go in this qualifying session just to make that pass down pit lane. You know, it cost you essentially 2 laps in the qualifying run, so that is not ideal. Whoa, pushed a little bit too hard there.
Yeah, just got a little wide into that slippery area. And you mentioned that the load's mostly off the car at that point, but you got 550 horsepower under the rear wheels there. The traction control is only going to be able to do so much, but pushing and trying to find the limit, I think he found it there. But again, if you're going to do that, qualifying's better time to do it than the race.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a flyer here for Elliott Skier. Purple, sector 1, sector 2, meaning he's the fastest overall on the day. Can he improve? Can he get in the 44s potentially here?
Across the stripe for Elliott Skier for Wright Motorsports. And yeah, so 1:45.070, almost into the 44. So the grip level is there, and Skier is there too.
Yeah, and right now Skier at the top. Tommy Milner sits in second. Verhagen now takes over the P2 position, but 4/10 off of that flyer by Elliott Skier. So we talked about the Porsche maybe not being the horse around this circuit. Elliott Skier has proven me wrong on that, based on the Porsche qualifying performances from the first session earlier.
Trent Hinman just improved up to 5th in the 85 for RS1, and here's the 63 of Tommy Milner. And this is a decent looking lap as well. He's currently 3rd on the board.
Foley's hit pit lane, so I'm sure if he's got a technical issue. It's very early in this run. He sits there in 6th overall, 2nd in Pro-Am, and I thought he was one of the favorites coming in for this pole position, but Tommy Milner takes the Corvette to the top.
1:44.995, so that's the first time we've seen in the 1:44 bracket. Bruinchowski in the 28 goes P5, and that's 4th in the pro class.
Tommy's home track, essentially. That's where his family is based, and his dad is a local here still.
Yeah, working through Snake now again. This team, with the close collaboration they've had with Corvette Racing, they've learned so much. The first handful of events when they ran the car in GT America, they were just trying to get things sorted out and really learn the quirks of the car and figure out just the baselines of where you're taking measurements from, and make sure that they're comparing data in the same ways to what Corvette intended and what other teams and other championships are doing, and just getting a baseline so that they could start turning the knobs and fine-tuning. I think they've gotten it to a point now where it's certainly, after we saw at Coda, a front-running car and front-running team.
Yeah, Tommy Milner, fastest overall in Sector 1, so he's improving on his previous lap. He's about to click over and give us a Sector 2 time. The car is looking strong. It just really, dynamically, it just looks different. It was really exemplified at Coda. You can see the car really hugging the road. He goes fastest overall in Sector 2. This is a faster lap. If he can just finish it off and seal the deal here down through the roller coaster and not get too aggressive here. Such a difficult corner here, Hogpen. You're looking to the right, the edge of the road comes off on the left-hand side in your peripheral there. Really tough to judge it correctly.
Tommy Milner, purple in sectors 1 and 2. Is it going to be a personal best and a best of the session? Across the stripe for Milner at a 1:44.775, quickest of everyone in this session, Cal.
Yeah, super impressive. So the car is really dialed in. And the real key is going to be the long-run pace of this car. How does it feel? How does it manage those tires?
Yeah, the number 32 of Tom Sargent for GMG Racing has gone 3rd overall, but fastest in the Pro-Am category. So this new car, again, proving to be quite quick
As is Tom. I think he's a real talent, and he's got a great opportunity here with Kyle and all of Kyle's programs that he's working with him on. And Kyle's one of the AM drivers who's stayed busy in the little break we've had here. He's running a number of championships this year, so he comes in full race mode versus some of the others trying to get back into that zone.
Yeah, one of the things I was asking some drivers this weekend with the potential for precipitation was, when's the last time you were racing in the rain? And for Kyle, it wasn't that long ago up in Canada, raced in the rain in another Porsche series. So got some experience in it. He was sort of indifferent.
Foley's back out, jumps up to P2.
Wow.
So there's pace in that Turner Motorsports BMW.
Let's see if he can double down. And he's only about a 10.5 off from Tommy Milner. So if he can find a bit more speed in either Sector 1 or Sector 2, where the Corvette was a bit quicker, I imagine Robbie Foley could have a shot here at pole. And here he is climbing up the S's.
Personal best in Sector 1. It doesn't touch Tommy's first sector time, but he's going to be really strong in Sector 3. He was purple, meaning fastest overall on his last lap. So not sure why he's down in pit lane, but he's taking that little breather, and he's cut some fast lap times here as the track is starting to rubber in a little bit.
Ran that Pirelli P0 on the left side, hanging it over the edge of the pavement. That was cool. He had that thing all the way to the edge of the road up Madison Avenue now. We'll see what Sector 2 looks like, and see if that is indicative of an even faster lap than he had just run previously.
Yes, he goes purple in Sector 2. This could threat Tommy Milner for the pole. He needs to find about a 10.5 over his previous best. Foley's on a bit of a flyer here.
Into Hogpen here, big jump on the curb on the left, back to the right. Power down early, and now it's just a drag race to the stripe to see if he can jump to the top of the board late in the session here for Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, qualifying at VIR. And across the stripe for Foley, and it is personal best, but just 61 thousandths of a second off of Tommy Milner.
That was a beautiful lap as well. He floated it perfectly down through the roller coaster, but Tommy Milner in the Corvette still has the edge. What can Tom Sargent do on this lap? Personal best Sector 2. Wow, so we had a moment there somewhere, lost a ton of time in Sector 3.
Lateral slide there for Tom Sargent, leaving Horseshoe, trying to get after it now.
And that's what we're going to see in the race, Kyle, is those tires start to get a little bit too much temperature in them. You're going to start to slip and slide a little bit, and that's where you got to just control, feel that tire, don't overdrive it. Otherwise, you just exaggerate that situation.
So 38, Neil Verhagen, working down through Hogpen. Looks like this car's returning to the pit lane. That car is currently 5th overall right now, 3rd in Pro-Am, down to 50 kilometers an hour for pit lane entry.
Yeah, chatted to Neil yesterday. He didn't seem to be the happiest of campers. Didn't really feel they had the pace here this weekend, even though the BMW Foley there has qualified 2nd at this point in time, and now Foley has gone personal best and fastest overall in Sector 1.
Some traffic up the road, though. It looks like one of the cars, the ST Racing car, is going to pull off to the left, but there's the 19 of Adam Carroll for S's Racing with Mercedes-Benz of Austin.
Purple Sector 2 for Foley.
Boy.
If he can get a clean run to the finish line, can he steal the pole away at the last possible moment? Is that Mercedes going to be in his way here?
We'll see down through Hogpen. I think he's going to be able to even maybe get a toe off this 19 car. That'll help.
This could be perfect.
Here comes Robbie Foley for Turner Motorsport, trying to steal the pole away from DXDT Racing. Will he do it in the 29 for Turner Motorsports? Oh, no, he will not.
4 thousandths of a second shy.
Unbelievably close. That's almost a tie. 4 thousandths.
Wow.
Yeah, that is incredible.
That was a great lap.
Don't think he's going to get a chance to. Well, he might give it a try, but now he's going to figure out how to get around this 19.
So he's had to fail.
Yeah.
I think that was the effort.
The 8 cars off course there, Andy Lee.
It's that tricky corner with that big puddle there. We saw Zach Veach get caught out earlier in this session.
It appears that we've got a red flag now out as well, so if there was anyone trying to set up for one more run, they will not get that opportunity with the 8 of Andy Lee over there by left hook.
It was a great little session there. That was fun.
That was fun, like a time attack session there for a moment. But so red flag is out late in the going, but Tommy Milner and Robbie Foley within 4 thousandths of a second of each other. And Corvette versus BMW, but here's a look at the number 8, just catching the tail end of it. Oops.
Oh,
it did bounce off the wall.
Yeah.
So, but again, the tire bundles here, Cal, that's, tire bundles are excellent at absorbing energy. And, in some cases, you know, they might wrinkle the bodywork a bunch, but they really reduce the amount of damage to the chassis. And Frank, doesn't look to be a lot of damage on this car, so you might have gotten away with that.
Yeah, you obviously lost a few little bits and pieces there. I saw some carbon fiber flying, but you are right. I mean, it's old school, right? You think of the tires, but just the absorption of the energy is really tremendous in how it does that. But beyond that, I think from the safety aspect of the track, they've invested huge amounts of resources to put in some major high-tech catch fencing and stuff should you get beyond the tire bundles here.
I should also mention that where he had that impact before the corner, there was a tire bundle there on driver's right, and you'd have to know that the track knows exactly where those tire bundles should be to catch cars when they go off, and that's a science in itself, just figuring out where to place the barriers, let alone build them. So they've done a very nice job with that, including the improvements to turn 14 that you talked about earlier, new tire bundles there and at turn 11, and a new catch fence at that roller coaster corner. But Elliott Skier, third place overall, second in the pro class with the Wright Motorsports car and a line of GT3 machinery heading back to pit lane at the tail end of qualifying 2 for Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. That got exciting, and that might be a harbinger of things to come here this weekend.
Yeah, big day for DXDT Racing, so 2 poles in the pro class, and then they operate under the same tent, so to speak, regulated racing, and Philip Ellis has the other overall pole for race 1.
Yeah, so they certainly showing their hand in qualifying here so far, but again, the race is a different story. 90 minutes, and reliability plays into that, a bit of strategy as well. We'll almost certainly get that, but let's have a look at the results here for qualifying 2 for Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. At the top of the board overall and in pro, it's DXDT Racing's Corvette with Tommy Milner. And then in second overall, it's the Turner Motorsport car leading Pro-Am with Robbie Foley and Justin Rothberg for race 2 this weekend. And of course, Elliott Skier right there as well. Wright Motorsports third overall, second in the pro category. But in Pro-Am, second place, Tom Sargent and Kyle Washington had a nice strong run there. Puts them P2 for race 2 as far as the Pro-Am championship goes.
I wonder if Robbie Foley had an extra taco last night with Turner Motorsports, and that was enough for the 4,000s.
I needed a couple more tomatoes on it or something, give him a little more juice there to get that extra 4,000s. But there's Brian Sellers and Scott Smithson sneaking into 5th overall and 3rd in Pro-Am with the other DXDT car. Neil Verhagen and Samantha Tan for ST Racing in 6th overall. Aaron Povolito and Ross Schwest in 7th. Adam Carroll and Will Hardiman for S's Racing in 8th. And Veach and Mars for Racer's Edge in 9th, and then Varun Chukski and Bill Oberlin in 10th. I think they were probably, wanted a bit more out of that session, but Trent Hinman, Spencer Pompelli in 11th, and Andy Lee, Elias Sabo, Jeff Burton, and Philip Ellis rounding out your running order here for qualifying 2.
Yeah, I think we're going to have some fun here today and tomorrow with the races. Very competitive field, and this racetrack never disappoints. It's a thrill ride when you're behind the wheel, and for the fans and viewers at home, it should be a great race here today, and we'll see what the weather does. That could be the real curveball, of course.
Yeah, great turnout here as well in the camping areas. That very strong pre-sale for that for the weekend, and got to talk to some of the campers last night that were all enjoying it, and a handful of drivers or a handful of campers were brand new to SRO here as well. Let's head down to Amanda Busick with an interview post-qualifying 2 here at VIR.
Well, Alec Udell was the best of the drivers in the pro category, and now Tommy Milner backs that up in qualifying number 2. And Calvin Fish was just talking about how VIR never disappoints. Now that we're seeing the Corvette at this place, where does it really sing around VIR?
I think it's one of the most enjoyable cars that I've driven up through the S's here. You really get to, it just is much confidence inspiring. And so you really get the flow. So it's like nice, smooth, and then ending at the top with turn 9 into 10. It's just the car feels so planted there that it's really a confidence inspiring. For me, I get to really enjoy the flow of the ribbon of tarmac up there.
Should we face any weather conditions this afternoon? How will that adjust performance here?
I think it's always tricky with VIR because of the nature of the elevation change you have here. There's a lot of running water across the track. The curbs get really slick. The painted surfaces are always a bit difficult to anticipate, and there's a lot of sheen in the in the tarmac, and so it's hard to tell, is it just damp, is it completely a puddle on there? So for me, I think this car, with the confidence that I get from it in the dry, I think we'll have the same in the wet.
Okay, what's your preference for today?
I'll take whatever we can get. I haven't driven the car in the wet yet so I think wet would be awesome, but dry, obviously, we've got a pretty good platform, so the guys from DXDT have put together a great car, and really happy with the Corvette Z06.
Racing drivers always wanting challenges, guys.
Yeah, they always want challenges, and a number of them this weekend, I asked about the wet weather potential, and they were all mostly indifferent. They said, well, take it as we can. I can't control it, so it just is what it is. But Cal, it's going to be a fun weekend, I think, with the potential for rain, but mostly dry qualifying effort here this morning with a very, very close battle, at least in qualifying 2 for our race on Sunday. But this was a pretty fun qualifying session to watch, but of course setting up for the first of our 2 races. Let's have a look at the highlights from qualifying this morning. And all started with the Wright Motorsports car in RS1 chasing as they worked their way through qualifying 1. Regulator Racing, though, was the quickest in qualifying 1. They're going to sit on pole or very close to it later today. Of course, the 63 was the quickest car in qualifying 2, just by 0.004 of a second. But Wright Motorsports going to be in the mix as well. Thanks for watching qualifying for Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Race 1 later today.